Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, basically in this lecture, as you can see that we are going to start with the new topic, that is the voting behavior. Okay. We are going to start with the voting behavior. And this is, you can say it is one of the most interesting topic that we are going to see here. Why? Because whenever we talk about the democracy, the freedom of speech and all, okay. So the one thing that comes out is the basic definition of the democracy that has been given by whom? Okay, now it's a question to you. Like, who had given the definition of democracy? Okay, and this is a very famous definition. Let me tell you: for the people, by the people, to the people. Democracy is for the people, by the people, to the people. So, who had given this definition? This is the question to you. And for this, you have 30 seconds. Time starts now. Just think about it, and please do not try to Google it. All right. Just pressurize your mind. Just recall. I can bet you that you have heard the name when you were in school. Okay. All right. Last 10 seconds remaining. Okay. Time's up. Correct answer was Abraham Lincoln. Okay. So he was the person who gave this definition to the people, for the people, by the people. All right. So basically, in the democracy, the main thing is that whatever the government would be there, or you can say the government, or you can say the people who will rule the country for a certain period of time, that particular government will be elected by whom? The citizen of the country. That particular government will be responsible to whom? The citizen of the country. That particular government could be removed by whom? The citizen of the country. All right. So basically, all the power in the democracy is totally lies with the citizen in a technical sense. So now the question is, how does the citizens rule the country then? Okay. So for this, we are required to understand the direct democracy and indirect democracy. All right. What is the meaning of this? So just take an example from our past. Then we will be able to connect it with the correct sense. Okay. So suppose you are in school. Okay. You are in school and in your usual days, like you have got, you can say period in which the teacher is absent. Okay. Like you have got a period in which the subject teacher who was supposed to come in that period is absent right now. Okay. So now you have to decide whether you want to go. You want to use it as a free period, games period. Okay. And you want to grant it to some other than the subject teacher. Three options you have: use the period as a games period, free period, or grant it to the subject teacher of other. All right. So for this, now your entire class discuss over it, and then you can say the students of your class decided to go with one option. Some decided to go with another options. All right. So basically, in this, suppose you can say you all are 100 students in the class. All right. 70 students said that they will use it as a games period. 15 students said that they will use it as a free period. And 15 students said that they will grant this period to the another subject teacher. All right. So now you can say that there is the vote that has been pulled out, and the vote is basically divided into the majority and the minority. Like how? If we take the case of majority, then 70 students are in the favor of the games. 15 students are in the favor of the free period. 15 students are in the favor of the granting the period to the another teacher. So now you can say that the majority has been secured by those who were demanding for the games period. Okay. So this is the first example that we have taken. Now just take the second example. In the second example, basically suppose you are in your college. Okay. And you are pursuing some course. All right. Then what happened that we know in the colleges, even in the school, but right now we are taking the example of the colleges, there will be some class monitor, right? There will be some class monitor, and basically the class monitor also known as class representative. Okay. So what is the work of him? Like he will be the representative of your class in front of the college authorities. Okay. So what happened? Like the director of your department was working on something. Okay. And you can say was planning some events for you. All right. Then different class representatives were invited in front of him and the discussion had. Okay. So you got three options. Like some of you wanted, you can say science exhibition. Some of you wanted a picnic. Some of you wanted a games event. Okay. So now your class representative who knows what you want to do, okay, will take up this thing in the discussion. Okay. The discussion that is going on with the class representatives and the director. Okay. So now we have take the two examples. Now just connect it with the direct democracy and the indirect democracy. The first example that we have taken. In that example, is there someone who is leading the class? Is there someone? No. Entire class was discussing, and as the basis of the discussion, the class was divided in the three sections. One section goes with the games, one section goes with the free period, one section goes with the subject teacher of another subject. All right. So that's how you can say the majority of the students were in the favor of the games period. So the class decided that they should go to the games period. But if we take the second example of the college, so here the class is not deciding by itself. Okay. They transferred their opinion to the class representative, and the class representative presenting the opinion in the meeting that is going on in the, you can say, room of the director. Similar thing is the direct, or you can say, and the indirect democracy. In the direct democracy, the people having the charge. Okay. In the indirect democracy, basically the people appoints the representative who will represent their opinions and who will work from them. Okay. So when we talk about India, so India is having the indirect democracy. Why? Because in India, the general people is not, you can say, in charge of exercising the powers. Okay. Like me and you could not decide what should happen in the country. Basically, we appoint the representatives during the general elections, and these representative goes to the legislative assembly of the state in which we are living in, or goes to the parliament at the central level, and then they decided that what is the opinion of the people of the place from where they got elected and how this should be done. All right. So that is the direct democracy and the indirect democracy. So when we talk about the voting, so voting is applicable in both direct democracy and the indirect democracy, but implications are different. Remember what I'm saying. Voting is applicable in both, but implications are different. Why? Because if we take the case of direct democracy, so just go to your school. In your school, you all have pulled a vote. Okay. And doesn't say that we didn't have any EVM machine ballot paper, so we couldn't do vote. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying that you voted, you supported some point, right? Like 70 students who were in the favor of the games period, they pulled their vote. Okay. They nodded their heads that yes, they wanted to go to the games. 15 students who were in the favor of the free period, they pulled their opinion, they pulled their support. 15 students who were demanding to give this subject, or sorry, to give this period to the subject teacher, they polled their vote. Okay. So the implication is voting for the decision. Okay. But when we talk about the indirect democracy, like your representative, so you are not going to represent your opinion directly. Okay. So basically you are required to appoint someone who will represent you in the meetings, in the legislature, in the parliament. All right. So basically in the indirect democracy, the voting is not for the decision, but for the candidate, but for the representative who will represent your opinions at the desired place. All right. So basically, remember the voting is applicable in both, but the implication is different. Okay. So now I have explained you a lot about the democracy, direct, indirect form, about the voting and all. Now, why I have told this to you? So that you could be mentally prepared that what we are going to see. All right. And why it is important to know about the voting behavior? Because the society in which we are living in, we oftenly, you can say, assume that we know everything and most of the thing about the society, but it is not true. Okay. And how the myth will be break here. Let's go. So basically, in the topic of the voting behavior, in the topic of the voting behavior, these are the topics that we have scheduled for the discussion, like the history of democracy and voting, like the importance of voting, why the voting is important, like the historic vote, like the legal framework, like the election machinery, like the political landscape and the party participation, like the election outcome, like the voting and approach, like the explanation parts, like the meaning of voting behavior, like the significance of voting behavior, like the determinants of voting behavior, like the role of media in elections and voting behavior in the modern terms. So all these are the topics that we are going to see in this particular series of voting behavior. All right. So let's first move with the history of democracy and voting. Okay. So basically, if we start tracking down the history of democracy and voting, okay, that's the first topic that we are going to see. So remember, there is the first instance that we are going to track down is the early voting in ancient Greece. Okay. Greece, oftenly known as the Greeks. Okay. And there is a very famous idiom that you have seen in your English classes, like I don't understand Greeks or Greeks and Latin. All right. What is the meaning of this? Whenever you are unable to understand something, what is written down, what is given here. So basically, we do not say that we can't understand in the slang language. We usually say that it's totally Greece to me. It means that you are not able to understand what is written down here. All right. So Greece was basically, you can say, the ancient civilization. All right. And you can say, if we talk about the modern world, whether it's a cultural field, language field, administration field, military field, and various science and technology and all. So the Greek is, you can say, one of the ancient civilizations that having their impact in that. All right. So even in the, we can say that if we talk about the modern forms of the democracy, so it is somewhere connected with the ancient form of the Greece democracy. All right. It means that the democracy was first somehow started with the early voting in ancient Greece. So that was the year of 508 BC. BC stands for before Christ. AD stands for after that of Christ. Okay. So that was this year when the ancient Greece basically introduced one of the earliest form of the democracy. Okay. Like we know, the forms of the democracy were different if we compare it with today and then we compare it with the ancient or the past times. Why? Because the thing changed over the period of time. And basically, when we talk about the Greeks, or you can say whenever we talk about the Greece, so even then the things were not as same as they seems today. Okay, very things were different. So that's why you can say that one of the earliest form. It means that the concept the Greeks had brought to the world, the concept is basically the form of the democracy. But earliest, it means it is not as much as modified it is today. Okay, so basically the Greeks held a negative elections. So what is the negative election? So basically, to understand, you are required to understand that what is the negative elections and what are the positive elections. Okay. So let me give you two examples, or you can say, let me give you two definitions also. Okay. So first, you can say the first example is that suppose you are in the classroom, all right, And in your classroom, there is a concept. Like there should be some house captain, okay, vice house captain, house culture captain, house sports captain and all. Okay, so there are 7, you can say, representatives that are required to be elected through your class or through your house. All right. So there are different candidates who are standing for the positions. Some of them standing for the house captain, vice house captain, sports captain and all. Okay. This is the scenario. And some of them basically were there for the voting. Like you can say you are in the line to vote for them. Okay. So here you are required to elect the person by giving your vote who will command your house in the proper manner, or you can say in the cultural field, in the sports field, in the education and all. Okay. So basically that is the process of selection. Okay. You are selecting someone who will lead this thing. Okay. Now take the second example. Now you are in the house, you are in the, you can say, the classroom, and now you have the 7 people standing in front of you. One is the house captain, one is the vice house captain, one is the cultural captain, one is the sports captain, okay, one is the adjutant of the house, and one is the dressing and all. So there are the total 7, you can say, members standing in front of you. Now, it is the instruction that all of you who were sitting in the voting room, you all are required to vote to eliminate the person from the position. It means that now you are not required to elect someone to that position, but you are required to choose the one who is to leave that position, and the position will be granted to the another one. Okay. Now, 2 options. First is for the selection. Second one is for the elimination. Now compare it with the definition. So let me give you a definition in the verbal form. The first definition is positive election is the election in which the voters are required to pool their vote and elect someone to the position. Let me repeat it. Positive elections are the elections in which the voters are required to pool their vote and elect someone to that position. Got it? Now, just a negative election. Negative election is a election in which the voters are required to pool their vote and eliminate someone from the position. Let me revise it. Negative election are the elections in which the voters are required to pool their vote and eliminate the candidate from the position. Okay. So now, by the definition, if you compare the example 1 and example 2, what do you think? Which example belong to the positive voting and which example belong to the negative voting? For this, you have, you can say, 30 seconds. Then I will give you the answer and your time starts now. Come on, just think about it. I have just given you the definition, even the examples. So it is easy to compare them both. 10 seconds have been passed off, 20 are remaining. 10 seconds are remaining. Okay, the time's up. So basically, the first example was the example of positive election. Why? Because the definition of positive election is when the voters vote to elect someone by pooling their vote to the position. So in the first example, you were the part of the house, you were the voter, you had the vote in your hand, all right, and basically there were some candidates who were electing the election for some position. Okay, then you were giving your vote to elect the one candidate which you seems fit to get elected to that position. Okay, the second example is the example of negative voting, because the negative voting stands out when the voters pull their vote to eliminate someone from the position. Okay, so in the second example, you were not electing someone. The positions were already granted to the 7 people, and you can say there were 7 position holders standing in front of you. You were only required to pull their vote to the candidate whom you think is not visible to holding that position, or in simple words, to remove the person from that position. Got it? That is the thing. All right. So basically, if we compare it with the Greeks, so Greeks also introduced the negative form of elections. Okay. That's why it is known as the earliest form of democracy. And that's why I had told you this is not as like we today have. Why? Because today we generally pull our votes to elect someone to that position, not to remove someone from that position. However, basically there is the removal process, like even if we compare it with the parliamentary process that we had already discussed. In the parliament, if the speaker is to be removed from the office, if the deputy speaker is to be removed from the office, then we know basically the members pull their vote. Similar is for the chairperson and all. Even if the president is to be removed, even you can say no confidence motion and all. All right. So there is the negative form also exists today. But if we talk about the general elections in which the mass voters and you can say in which the common citizen of this country participates, so basically we generally do not participate in the negative elections. Why? Because we pulls our vote to elect someone to the position, not to eliminate someone from the position. Okay, that's the thing. Like you can say, if you are voting for the BJP, Congress, and Aam Aadmi Party and all, so you are voting so that they could form the government. You are not voting so that you could eliminate from the government, right? So basically, the Greeks held the negative elections. Okay, so basically, there were some male landowners who voted each year to exile a political leader or candidate for the next 10 years. So basically, there was some council of the political leaders. Okay, and the council for the candidates who were of the political nature. All right. So basically, the voting rights were not applicable to all, or you can say the concept of universal adult franchise, which says if someone is above the certain age, okay, then the person could pool the vote, irrespective of the caste, religion, area, and all. Okay, but during the ancient times, the Greeks had the voting form but not have the concept of universal adult franchise. So the male landowners were basically voting each year to exile a political leader or the candidate from the council for next 10 years. Okay, it means that the person who would be voted the most will automatically eliminated from the political council for the tenure of 10 years. So how does the voters inscribe the votes? Like today we have the EVM, ballot paper and all. So what facilities were available on that time with the ancient Greeks? So basically the ancient voters, or you can say ancient Greek voters, inscribed their choice on the broken pieces of poetries. Okay. So there used to be the broken pieces of poetry which were using as the EVM, or you can say as the ballot paper, and that was called as the ostraca. What was the name of that thing? Ostraca. And giving rise to them as ostracize. Okay. What was the name given to it? Ostracize. So if any candidate received more than 6,000 votes, the one with the highest number was exiled. Okay. It means that the voting would be going on, and if some candidates reach the 6,000 votes, then what will happen? The votes of all the members were compared, and the person and the member who had the highest numbers would be exiled for the council for the tenure of 10 years. Okay, but if no one received 600 votes, sorry, 6,000 votes, then all the candidates remained. Okay, it means that all the candidates were remained, no comparing of the voting would be done. So there was a condition like negative elections would be there. The election would be done to eliminate the person. Universal adult franchise was not there. Only the male landowners had the right to vote. Okay, and basically they used to vote through the broken pieces of poetry called ostraca, and term was ostracize. Okay, and basically there was a condition: if any candidate received 6,000 votes, then the vote counting would be there, and the one who would receive the highest number of voting, that will be exiled. If no one received 6,000 votes, then no vote counting would be there, so that all the candidates were remained as it is. But due to the limited number of voters, typically only highly unpopular leaders were ostracized. Very few politicians would likely withstand 6,000 negative votes. Okay, so that was the concept that was began in the field of the democracy, in the field of the voting, from the ancient Greece, from the 508 BC. Okay, so students, basically in this lecture we have finished it here. In the next lecture we will continue from here. Till then, just revise the facts and figures that all we have discussed in this lecture. Okay, and we will continue from here in the next lecture. With this note, let's end this lecture, and what we say thank you.